I'm from the deep woods on a cool night when the earth was cloaked in darkness. It was a confusing time for the animals. The crickets didn't know when to chirp and when to stop. The birds did not sing in the morning because there was no such thing. Animals slept for weeks because there was no sunrise to wake them. In their confusion, the animals decided to elect a leader, someone to guide them through the darkness. And so the animals chose the porcupine, for he was the sharpest of the creatures. Now the porcupine decided that all the animals would have a democratic society, one in which each animal would vote on every issue. And so he organized their first meeting on top of the tallest mountain in the land. Now the fish thought this was rather unfair because they could not climb the mountain. But the salamanders agreed to tell the fish what happened later. And so, on the night of the meeting, all the animals began to gather on the mountain. Now, the bear was the strongest of the creatures, so he reached the top of the mountain first. You think the porcupine would have gone ahead, but I said he was the sharpest, not necessarily the most punctual. In fact, he almost didn't make it to the meeting, but despite his issues with tardiness, the other animals decided to stick with him as their leader. And so he got straight to the point. He asked all the other animals if they wanted nighttime and its darkness or daytime and its brightness. Now, in traditional democratic fashion, all of the animals broke out into a horrible argument. The wolves growled at the rabbits kicked at the mice bit at the beetles, and the beetles broke up. But the bear roared to silence everybody and said, "Night is best, we must have darkness," because the bear sleeps better at night. The wolves howled in agreement because they love to bark at the moon. Owls hooted because they have very small brains. They had no idea what was going on. None of the other animals said anything because they were afraid, and they didn't really want things to change. Nobody, except the teeny chipmunk, so small, wanted anything to change. He wanted day and night alternating so everyone could be happy, and so he said, "How about some light in the sky?" But nobody could hear him because he had very small lungs, and so he looked around and he climbed to the tallest tree he could find, and once he was at the top, he said again, "How about some light in the sky?" This time, the bear heard him, but he was not fond of opposition. And so he said again, louder, "Night is best, we must have darkness." And so the chipmunk stood up and replied, "How about some light in the sky?" And back and forth they began to argue. "Night is best, we must have darkness. How about some light in the sky?" "Night is best, we must have darkness. How about some light in the sky?" "Night is best, we must have darkness." Back and forth they argued, back and forth, till all the other animals grew bored and fell asleep. But they kept arguing like a furry filibuster, back and forth, day and night, until a bright orange light came over the horizon. All the animals opened their eyes to see their first sunrise. Light began to bathe the rocks and trees they had lived in their whole lives, and they began to see the bright greens and the deep grays, and they were elated. But the bear grew very angry. He had been tricked. The sun had heard the chipmunk's song, and the chipmunk kept it busy long enough for the sun to get there. The bear roared in frustration and charged at the chipmunk's tree. He began hitting it till all the creatures fell out like a piñata full of rodents. The chipmunk hit the ground and began running down the hill, jumping from rock to rock. The bear gave chase, crashing through trees and brush. He was gaining on the chipmunk. The chipmunk was trying harder and harder, and the sun began to rise over the horizon, and it illuminated a small hole under a large boulder in the distance. So the chipmunk sped up and dived as the bear swung with one giant paw, and in a puff of fur, the chipmunk barely made it into the hole with 3 long scratches down his back. The bear turned, dejected, towards the mountain to see all of the other animals celebrating, praising the chipmunk for bringing this bright new thing into their life. Everyone except the porcupine, who gave him a nasty glare. Apparently, he had rubbed him the wrong way. From that moment forward, day and night alternated interchangeably. The earth was warmer, the animals were happier, and the porcupine decided to punish the bear for his outlandish actions by sentencing him to sleep in a cave every winter so he could be with the darkness he desired so much. Now, the chipmunk is still partial to holes, but sometimes you can see him running through beams of light with 3 black marks down his back, a reminder of what it took to bring some light into the world.